Supportables, congratulations, we made it to year 2. You even had a proper draft experience where many of you could get into the same house, feel the same anxiety and nervousness as there might have been technical issues, hide out in different rooms to try and protect your picks, all part of the draft experience. Now we're back to what we remember from last year, so even though there's more of us and more teams, this part should feel familiar as we go into the ads, the drops, and getting ready for week 1 kickoff. If I have any luck in trying to make videos this year, because as you know, I'm no longer in Geneva for a reason. I do actually have something they're paying me to do Monday to Friday. So I'm going to have to be a bit more concise. Try not to roll your eyes when I say that. And I'm going to have to make sure I do my best to be a little more time efficient with not just recording, but also when I record. So let's see how I do. I'm going to try my best, but even in here, let's see if I can shut up and actually get to the draft review. For this one, I'm just going to keep it to a similar model. I have 5 S's and then 1 comparison. So I'm going to talk about your stud, your swing, your steal, your stash, and then your sucker. Let's see how I do. Similar to last year, I'm going to do the order of this based in reverse order from what Yahoo thinks. And in this particular case, despite the fact that you had a phenomenal year last year, Raph and James, they got you at a D- in finishing last. Don't worry, I'm next. I don't believe in Yahoo either. But let's break down your team quickly. You're the 8th pick overall, so that did dictate where you could go with this. Now your studs, I'd say Mahomes, or potentially you could include Mahomes and Stroud, because I think close enough in picks. 2 quarterbacks to start off the year, so great call there. In terms of your swing, so the thing that could swing you to success or swing you to failure, I put your young receivers. You got Drake London, Collins, and Neighbors. Now, they could be phenomenal, and if they are, I think you're going to be a force to reckon with. If they don't produce the way that they're supposed to this year, and as young receivers, sometimes that happens, I think your success goes where they go. Your steals, I have Seattle in general. I'm actually pretty big on Seattle this year, so the fact that you have Kenneth Walker at running back, and then you have Smith and Jigba at wide receiver, I think those are huge steals, and they're going to pay off for you pretty well. Your stash, you took Hollywood Brown late. Now, if he comes in and he catches the balls like we know he can, he could be huge in Kansas City once he gets healthy and aligned to the offense, so you just want to stash him away. For your sucker pick, I took Javonte Williams. I think he's great. I know he's still young and he's still got a lot to go, but just he's never been able to put it together health-wise. And as someone who had him in previous years, he can be just super frustrating. So I had a sucker pick there. When coming up with your draft comparison, at first I was leaning towards how much you're depending on Houston for your success or Seattle. And I was looking at people from there like the Beyoncés or even George Foreman's. But then I looked at your team, and realistically, you got a couple of the mainstays, some older talent, but you are super dependent on your young stars, the Neighbors, the Collins, the Londons, the CJ Strouds, even to an extent you could say Javonte Williams, Smith and Jigba, Njoku. So realistically for your comp, I kind of had you as the DiCaprio of our league. Maybe there you go, Raph. You've always garnered yourself as the Swiss version of Leonardo DiCaprio, in the fact that you've got a few of your homeboys, or my homeboys in this case, but for everyone else, it's once you get to 26, get off my yacht. You got the young talent that's going to bring you through. So for me, that's what I think of when I think of your draft. Now, considering we're the bottom 2, let's hopefully meet in the finals. There is nothing more entertaining than someone talking about their own fantasy team, and I know I say that every time I talk about my fantasy team, so just sticking with tradition here. I'll go as fast as I can. For me, I took a ton of chances. So you could say my stud is Richardson. Some might even say Garrett Wilson. Both electric when they need to be, even taking my third, but have huge amount of question marks, both not just in health, but also in structure and style. For my steal, I put Worthy because I think he's going to be huge in Kansas City. For my swing, literally everyone on my team has massive up and massive down swings. I'd say my stash and my sucker are the same. All of my late round running backs, the Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, and Bucky Irvin, very much different situations, but the same idea. I'm taking some gambles on people that hopefully will take over backfields, and backfields I think that could be somewhat productive, but nothing is given there, and if injuries happen, who knows if I'll even keep them. So for me, if I'm going to take this many big swings, I had to take something that was all risk, very little reward, high reward, but also high risk. I went with pretty much every Tom Cruise role. I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan, but you want to say Cole Trickle? Sure. Am I going to be the beginning of Days of Thunder when he's reckless, making tons of mistakes and nothing's cashing out and almost puts himself in the hospital? Or am I going to pay off and people like Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr. are going to come into their own, and am I going to be the toughest person to beat? who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. But like I said, Raph, James, we're the bottom two in this barrel, so let's try and meet in the final. Randy, as our 10th pick, I actually think you got kind of a raw deal with this D+. To be honest with you, I was trying to think of which team, aside from my own, that I would have liked the most. Now, granted, I don't tend to agree with Yahoo, and I actually think you have arguably the best draft out there, and I think there's a lot of upside here. For your studs, since it was kind of a last of the first round, first of the second, we could probably put Bijan and Chase as both. Now, we are a quarterback-heavy league, but the fact that you got both of these is actually pretty incredible. For your swing, I put some of the health concerns like Chase, with that whole offense being a health concern, or Cooper Kupp. I think that when they produce well, they're the top two of the top receivers in the league. But if there are some of those concerns, you're going to have to deal with it. Your steals, I put both Daniels and Rice. I know they were your 5-6, but I do think that they're going to have both great years, and I think they were great picks at that value. Your stashes, everyone from 11 to 14. You took the Cleveland backfield, Ladd McConkey and Blake Corum. I think between all of them, if you can keep them without having to drop due to injury, I think those are all great picks that could pay off at some point in the season. Obviously, the Ford and Chubb back and forth, that's more of just really one roster spot because we do have the IR. For your sucker, I kind of put Brian Robinson Jr. just because Washington I don't think is going to do a whole lot. And in fact, I think you already took Washington's best running option in Jaden Daniels, but he's still a solid running back. And I mean, he's been shot before and that didn't stop him. So he's going to get points. Yours is tough because you kind of, with Ball Too Well and obviously making so many Taylor references, I'm always going to try and seep in as many as I can. So I spent a considerable amount of time trying to relate yours to a Taylor Swift song or attitude, and I'm just not going to go as deep cut as you want it to be. I went fearless because I think you took a lot of really good chances, and I think that for me, they're going to pay off, but obviously some of them do present a fair number of risk. But I know that's probably for a Swiftie a very mainstream comparison. So I'm starting to follow Nora Princiotti a little bit more, and maybe I'll try and go a little deeper cut as we go in, but don't hold me to it because there's no way. I'm scared to type Taylor Swift on the internet and have someone yell at me. So congrats. I think you had a great draft. Jax, there's actually a chance that you listen to this before you even see your team, although I know you've just made some moves, so that's not true. You made some priorities, and after a couple conversations, I think now you're committed to getting back in the game. You didn't want to auto-draft, and now I think it was a shame that I just broke down that way, but your team still has a tremendous amount of upside, and granted, Yahoo thinks it's better than the three of us that were actually there. So your D+ is not what you want, especially at fourth pick, but you still have some people to work with. Your stud, Tyreek Hill, obviously could be the best receiver in the game. You still end up with A.J. Brown, too, second year in a row, which I think is kind of crazy. Your swings, so your successes, really, to me, depend on the fact that you didn't really take too many quarterbacks. Now, I know that was something you've already tried to remedy. I think Stafford was an unsung hero in this one. I think the Rams are going to have a good offense, so great for Yahoo to pick that up for you, but you're going to want more than one QB. Your steal, here's where you can make the argument. Taysom Hill, the fact that he's a tight end kind of drives me nuts. I have taken him in other leagues, and I think I actually had him in this league last year. New Orleans is supposed to use him, actually, but he was your third tight end, and he's only really a cheat code if it is a tight end, so we'll see how that works. In terms of your stash, I think Jonathan Brooks, obviously, going straight onto your IR is what you want to do there, because if he comes back, he could be a force. And I think your sucker, to be honest, just for me, Mark Andrews, if you had actually drafted him and had you ever asked my advice, which I know doesn't happen terribly often, I would have said stay away from him just because I do think he's got another competing tight end in that system and he's a little bit older and he is getting over an injury. So for me, that was your sucker pick. Tough for me to come up with a draft comparison on a draft you didn't do, but considering the reason why you left, I was thinking Bill Murray and Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou and how obsessed someone can be with ocean lifestyle and going on these quests and dives, and that's sometimes leading you to greatness and sometimes hindering your ability to compete in fantasy sports. I think already whilst in the Azores, you making priority to make some ad drops is a clear statement to the league that just because you missed the draft doesn't mean you're taking this year off. Jules and Lara, after some success last year, Yahoo has you just in the middle of the pack here with a solid C, but I think as always we disagree. Better than last year's draft report though, so already an up in the game, and we know that last year's draft report had nothing to do with your success because you obviously did quite well. Your stud this year is Lamar Jackson, although you could even argue that St. Brown should be considered that, but in a quarterback-heavy league, I think having Lamar at the 9th spot was probably a good deal. Your swings, I have your kind of middle receivers here, your 3-4, Olave and Adams. They're two people with a lot of talent, but in offensive structures that aren't great. Now, both of them are going to have to throw the ball, and when they do, my assumption is that it's to them, and you're going to do quite well. But there might be some weeks where their offense is kind of stagnant, so I think that kind of swings your success. In terms of your steal, I'm a huge fan of your 13 pick, Shakir, coming out of Buffalo. I think, again, someone's going to have to catch the ball in that offense, and for me, I think it's going to be him. Your stashing, so people have just wait on a little bit until they develop here. I think your Bears offensive players, Swift and Roma Nduze, I think, again, could be great. I think the Bears offense is super young, and so we're going to see how they gel together. So that could be right off the bat, or it could take them a few weeks. Your sucker pick, I kind of took Mixon just because he's just very unromantic as running back picks go, although he's in a really good offense. So it could also be the fact that you bet on Ridley at number 9. And for those who don't know, just Google Ridley and gambling. I tried to make a funny there. In terms of your draft comp, I went back and forth to a bunch. I mean, number 1, I was looking at Netflix because you actually had 2 Netflix receivers that premiered or that were a focus of that show this year in both Adams and Kittle. But I was also trying to look at kind of an Irish-New York connection because now we got one person, I believe, in New York and Lara, and then, obviously the Lang-Irish connection. And when I did look up, I was also thinking someone who likes trash talking. And then John McEnroe came into mind. So I'm going with him, also because I'm sure you both can pull off a headband just fine. But a little bit of volume, but you typically back it up with some strong play. So good luck this year. Coming into our Yahoo predicted top 5, we have our first of 2 B grades. 4th and Conquer, so welcome to the league, Hale and Vinny. I think CeeDee Lamb as your first pick was probably the first receiver I had going off the board, so well done there as your stud. In terms of your swing, so how your success might fare, I think going with the old quarterbacks. I mean, Burrow's not necessarily old, but his body is getting a little bit older, and obviously not being able to throw 3 days in a row in training camp. So he could come out and be a league winner. He also could come out and be a bit rusty. I think the same goes obviously for tinfoil hat Rodgers. He's been a league MVP and a fantasy winner. He also lasted only a few snaps last year, so we'll see how that goes. I happen to think that the Jets are going to have a bounce back year, so I think that it will end up working out in your favor. In terms of steal, I have Spears at 11 as a steal. I think he's going to end up stealing the job in Tennessee, so I think that was a great pick. For your stash, just later on, I did mention in previous that Buffalo's going to have to throw the ball, and so obviously a young rookie in Coleman coming in, I think it might take him a minute or two to get adjusted to the offense, but I think he could have a huge, huge upside. In terms of your sucker pick, I kind of went for some of the teams that you did end up latching onto, so some major skill position players in Tennessee, Washington, and Vegas. This was later on, the McLaurin, Zamir White, and then I did mention Tiaje, even though I'm big on Spears. I just think sometimes, having offenses that aren't so prolific can sometimes be frustrating. So these are players that could end up spitting this back in my face because I think they're all super talented. It's more structure-based criticism than anything else, but obviously they've got a lot of upside. In terms of your comparison, I was thinking, the key parts of your team are a little bit older, especially people like Derrick Henry, who could have a monster year, but he is getting on in ages. Same with people like DeAndre Hopkins, your other Tennessee kind of hopeful. So I wasn't sure. Yours is really going to depend. When it comes to old people, is it going to be someone who ages well, like an old wine, like a George Clooney, kind of classy, beardy old, or is it Grandpa Simpson with his pants down, dancing in a circle? Time will tell. I'm big on your team, but who knows? Injuries happen as they go. I do expect you to be active first-year league members, and so adds and drops will probably be in your future. So let's see if at the end you kind of earn the B spot and just are happy with a top 5, or if you're the kind of team that's going to push for a title. Technically tied, I guess, for 4th with a B. We have, this isn't a welcome to the league for all 3 of you. Paul, it kind of is. You were around last year. You certainly joined a lot of the drinks. I don't know how active already your team is more active than it was last year. So, hey, welcome to the league. Paul. Obviously, you have Jake and you have Mitch kind of helping you out, so maybe that is where some of that is coming from. But either way, Yahoo thinks that you have the chance to be top 4, which I know would be an improvement, but I know the crew there is probably hoping for a little bit better. So quick look at your team. In terms of studs, I would include your top 2, Hurts and Hall. I know we're a quarterback friendly league here and you need more than one, or you probably want more than one, but if we were just a standard league, Hall probably would have been a top 4 pick, so well done there. Your swings are your other 2 quarterbacks. I think you definitely, your success will kind of go with what kind of depth they give you. Caleb Williams could be a huge player if he can learn the offense and they can kind of adjust around him and his talents. Herbert is a massive talent and has had massive years. It's really the offense that's held him back, but as we note, you're a very Chargers heavy team in terms of your kicker, receiver, running back, and quarterback. So you're obviously putting a lot in that basket. I tend to agree. I think they're going to make the playoffs this year, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to jump to your stash, which I do think are your LA Chargers. If you can, Gus ends up being the lead back. If Palmer can catch the ball, someone has to, and if Dicker, your kicker, can step up, I think that they can be massive help and support to your team. But we'll see if you can keep them around. Your steal and your sucker kind of go together here. So Pitts and Diggs could be massive steals, and we know they have a lot of talent. We know they've put up seasons before. I mean, Diggs is certainly more proven, but he kind of gave up last year. Now, he did make a change of scenery and gone to Houston, but that's a very, very loaded wide receiver core, so we don't know how he's going to fit in. With Arthur Smith gone in Atlanta, Pitts should be better, and he should go back to form of a 1,000-yard tight end receiving year. But he's had a couple years in a row where he's been super disappointing, and I know a lot of people kind of have a stigma against taking him, so that's where we're at. When it came to your comparison, I was thinking of a lot of kind of niche ones, groups unifying together. I was even thinking like old school, like the Power Rangers bit. Then I was going on an Irish tangent, and then I realized it hit me right in the face. You have Jake Paul as 2 owners, and you are people that I know you're going to say things that are borderline funny and possibly digging at people, trying to antagonize, trying to push people on the chat board. So, sorry, folks, that's your comp for this year. Yahoo predicted top 3. We have our only B+, and that's in bench, don't kill my vibe. Kelsey, you're on your own this year. We're going to get to that later. But now we may have thought we knew how the relationship between you and Frankie worked last year and who was making the picks. Now there's no question. You're standing on your own 2 feet here. Your stud, obviously Josh Allen, number 1 quarterback on most boards. So I think him going early was a great pick. In terms of your swing, you have a lot of sophomore players in Gibbs, Nakua, and Laporta right after who had great freshman years. Sophomores sometimes develop a new part of their game, and they actually end up being more helpful and more well-rounded, although sometimes there is that sophomore slump. So I think their success is really going to swing on your team's success. In terms of your steals, it's funny. I'm actually not big on the Pittsburgh running backs, but where you got them and the fact you got them back-to-back, so you kind of have it handcuffed, I actually do think can be a steal. I think you could say the same thing with Green Bay's wide receivers and Watson and Dobbs. I don't know who's going to end up being the standout, but you kind of have your bases covered and you don't really need either of them right away. You have enough depth. So I think those can end up paying off for you. In terms of a stash, I do think Tyler Algier, I know you had him last year and he kind of helped you out in times. They have a new offense this year and I think they're going to be a bit more creative. So the fact that they still have Bijan, I think they're going to use him more enigmatically and more creatively. So it means Algier could just get some of the basic carries. We forget, or some people forget, he did actually have 1,000 yards rushing in his first year. So he does have a lot of talent there. For your sucker pick, I had to go it. I mean, I know he's your 3rd quarterback, and hopefully he never actually has to step into your lineup, but Deshaun Watson's a tough hang. I'm saying this as a Browns fan. This is meant to be fun, and he is not fun at all to cheer for, so he is your sucker bet. In terms of your draft comparison, like I said, I think we assumed that you were kind of the brains of the operation, but I don't want to undermine what Frankie may have done in vibes. I know he was there with you on the draft, and maybe you guys had conversations we weren't aware of, but this is your first year to step out and do it on your own. So when I was thinking of your draft comparison, I don't know, maybe it's just because Deadpool is a big summer movie, so I keep getting that NSYNC song pop up on random things. But I was thinking of NSYNC. This is your year to kind of separate from the group. Are you going to be a Timberlake or are you going to be a Fatone? I think we know which way you're heading, but this is your chance to prove once and for all who was the brains and who had the talent in that group. Our returning champions, Team Kickass, Kate and Nick. Yahoo thinks An A is nothing to sneeze at, and a second place finish is where you're supposed to be. So let's break that down. Your stud, obviously, Justin Jefferson, one of the most talented receivers in the game. Obviously, good to build off of him. Your swing, I think a lot of your success, now Jonathan Taylor is obviously a little bit more proven. Then you got Rachaad White, who had a great year last year, but plays for Tampa Bay. Then you got Zach Moss, great talent. Cincy's offense, we're not so sure. Eckler, great talent. Not sure where he fits in. So you need one or two of those running backs aside from Taylor to work out for you to really give you that kind of depth that you're going to need this year, or be active on the waiver market. So I think that is a big swing for you, because I think they all have great upsides, but their downsides could make them tough to play. In terms of steals, it's funny. I was big on Trevor Lawrence. I dropped him in most leagues. I had him in a bunch last year, and he really disappointed me, but I actually think he's going to have a massive year. So him and Cousins as your quarterback combo, I think could end up actually helping you out as long as they stay healthy in their offenses, although you can say that about just about anybody. For your stashes, I was looking at someone like Will Levis, but actually I think I'm going to go Brock Bowers. I'm not huge on the Vegas offense in general, but he is a tremendous talent. I avoided him just because if you look at his picture, he just kind of seems like that guy that yells out his own name when he finishes, which I know is weird, but just now you can't get that out of your head. In terms of your sucker, this might be controversial with this group. It could be Kelsey. I know taking him third, last year he was a first-round pick, and he should have been. He is still one of the most talented tight ends in the game. But he's also older and he's very smart. He's not going to go crazy. He does take plays off. He did last year. He knows he is training for a longer season than just our fantasy season. So they're going to use him because they have to, and he's great, but they often use him as a decoy. So sometimes he doesn't put up those fantasy numbers, and then sometimes he puts up those weeks that are monstrous. So I'd say that one could be a tough pick unless you end up dealing him to Randy at some point. And then I was thinking of a draft comp, and you're making it very clear. You want everyone to know that you're the champion. You're going for another title. It is clear. So I was thinking, you're a little bit ring obsessed. I kind of went with Gollum on this one. You've seen the ring. You know its power of the championships. Plus, you took a guy in Kelsey that knows he wants a ring. We're just not sure what ring he's going after this year. So for me, that's where I think you're headed. You're clearly a championship caliber team. You're looking for another title. You're almost obsessed over it. And Yahoo thinks it's going to work out for you. So who am I to judge? A-pluses are very difficult to come by in Yahoo drafts. Many go by year after year and you don't even see an A-plus. In this particular case, the Dirty South, Pamela, you're clearly in it to win it. Last year was both a success and kind of a failure. You had a phenomenal regular season and you just didn't take the regular season title. And then you battled in the playoffs and just didn't finish in the money there. So that's got to burn, and you're certainly bringing that back with focus this year. You got our number one pick and you went McCaffrey. Obviously, he's your stud. In terms of your swing, I thought your wide receivers are going to really dictate things. You've got a very talented wide receiver group. Marvin Harrison Jr., Metcalf, Pittman, Pickens, Johnson, even Lockett. So these are all people with tremendous amounts of talent. It's just which of the offenses are going to give them the best chances to score. I think that'll be your swing. In terms of your steal, I'm a big fan of Ingram. I know he's not always the sexiest pick at tight end, but Jacksonville targets him a ton, meaning he's going to get a lot of volume, and I think where you got him, especially on some of the other tight ends that went earlier, I think that was a huge steal. Your stash, the people you're going to have to hang on to, it's going to be interesting to see who rises in your running back core. You took Chandler, could come out of Minnesota. Elliott, I know it seems odd a stash because he's someone that's so old, but Dallas has got to run the ball, and he really kind of is probably their best option. Their backup isn't great in terms of hands and all that, so you should be getting a look there, but you might have to be patient with him. Your sucker, I was originally going to go Singletary, but then I noticed what you did at the end there. You took Butker as kicker, and I get it. You want to win, but that's kind of a sucker play. We're doing this for fun, and, I would assume that most people in this league don't necessarily stand for what he was kind of preaching on his speech. Even the university had to disown it. But that's when it made me think of your draft comparison. Clearly last year got to you. You're willing to do anything you can to get the title. You'll shake hands with the devil. So when I was thinking of shaking hands with the devil, to be honest, if it was anyone else in the league, I'd probably go the old Simpsons episode, the Halloween one where he had to make a deal with the devil to get a donut. But you're way classier than that. You go to fancy concerts and wine and whiskey tastings and art exhibits. So we'll go old school and Faustian. So Faust can be your draft comparison. You're willing to do anything this year, and I think we know it. So we'll see how that pans out. I do think you have a very talented roster, and Yahoo definitely thinks you're the one to beat. Supportables, if I planned this right, you should be watching this hopefully just before kickoff or before you go to bed before kickoff happens, depending on your time zone. We kind of span the globe right now. But I know most of you being in that European time zone, I hope you have time to watch this. Think about kickoff. Maybe think of the games that we watched together last year and see if you can follow along, or just go to bed, wake up in the morning and trash talk as per usual. Either way, I'm going to do my best, like I said, to have these out on a weekly basis. Let's see if I'm successful. But in the meantime, I wish I could have been there to draft with you all last week. Looked like you had a blast, but I wish you all a great week 1.